The morning rush at a small-town cafe was just like any other. Steaming coffee, quiet chatter, and the faint clatter of dishes. Officer Ryan, a seasoned cop known for his friendly smile, had stopped in for a quick break. Sitting at the corner table was an elderly woman, frail but dignified, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She glanced at Ryan, her eyes sharp yet weary, and hesitated before motioning for him to come closer. Curious, Ryan approached, expecting a friendly comment or perhaps a small-town concern. But as she leaned in and whispered, her words sent a chill down his spine. His casual demeanor vanished, replaced by an alert intensity. What she said wasn't just unusual. It was alarming enough to make him instinctively reach for his radio. The cafe patrons carried on, unaware of the tension now crackling in the air. Ryan's heart raced as he weighed his next move. He had to act quickly, but calling for backup in such a quiet place could stir panic. What had the elderly woman seen or heard that left her so unsettled? And why did Ryan feel this was no ordinary situation? What happened next would change everything. Ryan's fingers hovered over his radio as he studied the woman's face. Her voice trembled, barely audible above the hum of the cafe, but her words were etched with urgency. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes darting toward the window, as if she feared someone might be watching. "Please," she whispered again. "I didn't know who else to tell. You're the only one I trust." Ryan crouched slightly to meet her gaze, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, I need you to tell me exactly what you saw. Take your time." She hesitated, her hands trembling against the porcelain cup. "It's not safe to talk here," she said softly. "But it's about that man. He comes here every morning. Same time, same table. Something's not right. He left something behind today." Ryan followed her eyes to the far corner of the cafe, where an empty table stood. It seemed ordinary at first glance, but Ryan's training told him to trust instincts, his and hers. "Did you touch it?" he asked. The woman shook her head, clutching her chest. "No, but I think it's dangerous." Ryan's pulse quickened. He signaled discreetly for backup. Whatever this was, it couldn't wait. Ryan kept his demeanor calm, but his mind was racing. He casually stepped toward the table the elderly woman had mentioned, his eyes scanning every detail. A small, leather-bound notebook lay tucked under a salt shaker, almost as if deliberately placed to go unnoticed. Without touching it, Ryan leaned in, noting faint smudges on the surface and what looked like a corner of folded paper sticking out. The cafe door jingled as another customer entered, drawing Ryan's attention for a brief moment. He turned to see a man in a dark coat glance around before heading to the counter. Was this the person the woman had described? He seemed ordinary, maybe too ordinary, but Ryan knew better than to make assumptions. The elderly woman's unease deepened as her eyes flicked toward the man. "That's him," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ryan's instincts kicked in. He discreetly radioed his partner, keeping the situation low-key. His backup was en route, but they couldn't risk alarming the man, or the other patrons, until they had more information. As the man waited for his coffee, Ryan debated his next move. Should he confront him now or wait to see if he made a mistake? Either way, something about this didn't add up. Ryan's pulse quickened as he kept one eye on the man and another on the table with the notebook. The elderly woman's words echoed in his mind. Something about this wasn't right. The man took his coffee, casually scanning the room, his movements deliberate yet calm. If he noticed Ryan watching, he didn't show it. The backup officers arrived quietly, blending into the cafe like regular customers. Ryan signaled them with a slight nod, indicating they should hold their positions. He couldn't afford to make a move until he was sure. The man suddenly walked toward the door, his steps confident. Ryan's heart raced. If he left now, they might lose their chance to figure out what was going on. But just as the man reached the exit, he paused, glanced back at the table, and then at Ryan. Their eyes met. The man's expression remained neutral, but Ryan could see the calculation behind it. He was deciding something. Without a word, the man turned and walked out, leaving his coffee untouched. Ryan's instincts screamed at him to follow, but the notebook still sat on the table, an unanswered question. Was it a clue or a trap? Ryan had seconds to decide. Ryan's gut told him to move fast. He signaled one of the backup officers to trail the man discreetly while he stayed behind to investigate the notebook. Slipping on a pair of gloves, he carefully picked it up and flipped open the cover. His stomach tightened. Inside were pages filled with detailed sketches of the cafe, along with timestamps and notes that looked like coded messages. One phrase stood out, circled in red, 11:30 sharp. Ryan checked his watch, 11:27. Whatever was planned, it was happening soon. Just as he processed this, the elderly woman gasped, clutching her chest. He left something under the table, she whispered, her voice breaking. Ryan crouched down and peered beneath the table. His heart sank. A small suspicious device was taped to the underside. It had wires and a blinking red light. The calm atmosphere of the cafe was now a powder keg, and Ryan had to act fast. He quickly signaled the other officers, motioning for an evacuation without causing panic. As customers began filing out under the guise of a safety issue, Ryan's radio crackled. Officer down came the voice of the officer tailing the man. Ryan's blood ran cold. The situation had just escalated far beyond what he'd expected. Ryan's breath quickened as the cafe emptied. With the device still ticking under the table, and his colleague potentially in danger, every second felt like an eternity. He radioed for the bomb squad, but time was running out. The elderly woman sat frozen, watching him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "I need you to leave now," Ryan urged her gently, helping her to her feet. She hesitated but finally nodded, shuffling toward the door as the last of the patrons exited. Ryan's backup officer stayed by the entrance, scanning the street for the suspect. The ticking grew louder in Ryan's ears as he examined the device more closely. Something about it didn't add up. It looked too crude to be functional. Taking a calculated risk, he carefully peeled it off the table and placed it on the floor. No explosion followed, just a faint crackle of static from a hidden speaker. It wasn't a bomb. It was a decoy. At that moment, his radio buzzed again. "Suspect apprehended," the officer reported, his voice tense. "But there's something else. He had another device, and it's live." Ryan's heart sank as he bolted outside. The suspect's twisted smirk confirmed his worst fear. The real danger wasn't in the cafe. It was hidden somewhere much larger. The clock was still ticking. Ryan sprinted toward the squad car where the suspect was detained, his mind racing. "Where's the other device?" he demanded, his voice sharp. The man's smirk faltered for just a second before he muttered, "You'll never find it in time." But Ryan wasn't ready to give up. He grabbed the notebook, flipping through the coded pages until he found something, a list of locations. One stood out, the town square just a block away. Ryan radioed the bomb squad and backup, urging them to secure the area. Minutes felt like hours as the team worked tirelessly, sweeping the square. Finally, hidden beneath a bench near a crowded bus stop, they found it. The device was intricate, but the squad managed to disable it with seconds to spare. As the tension lifted, Ryan returned to the cafe, where the elderly woman was waiting anxiously. She clasped his hands, her relief palpable. "You saved so many lives today," she said softly. Later that evening, Ryan sat quietly, reflecting on the day's events. One person's courage and vigilance had stopped a disaster, proving how small actions could make a huge difference. The cafe was quiet again, but Ryan knew this story would linger in the town for years to come.